about how to establish rapport in sales. For those of you that don't know, I'm an NLP master practitioner, but I've also been selling for over 40 years. I really started as a younger person. Really, my biggest thing that I started, I think I was about 12, and I started pushing a lawnmower around the neighborhood, hustling up landscaping, and so that started. I'm 56 now, so 44 years in selling, and have really, I've sold tens of millions of dollars worth of products and made millions of dollars in the process, and looking to help others grow. But about 5 years ago, I started helping other coaches and consultants master their selling processes. So I've helped some people who produce multi-million dollar years improve, grow their sales, and get better at the nuance of selling. And so, as a person who has much sales experience and that training in NLP, I've learned to use language and speech and communication to improve my sales and to help others improve. And so I've made millions of dollars for others, and now I'm going to try to make millions of dollars for myself. So I hope that clears up. So we're going to talk a little bit about rapport and getting into a selling mindset, because one of the bases of NLP, and NLP, by the way, is NeuroLinguistic Programming. And so basically it's how the mind uses language to program thoughts and outcomes. All right, so that's the foundational basis of NLP, and if that's certainly something we can talk about later. But communication in sales is critical, and people buy from people they like. If you don't like the salesperson, you're not going to buy from them. And as a person in sales, it's critical that you become likable, and people who are like each other. So if you're like the person who is your prospect, your customer, your potential client, whoever that is, if you're like them and they are like you, they're more apt to buy, and they're more apt to put down those defenses that normally would keep them from considering you as a source for whatever it is outcome that they're trying to achieve. So it could be you're in real estate, or you're a coach, or you have a brick and mortar business, whatever that is. It's critical that you connect with your prospect, your customer, your client, so that you can make that transaction. So I'm going to share my screen here. And again, if you're just on the live, find the Zoom feed link below, and we'll go from there. All right. So I've written a book called the NLP 5-Step Selling Process, and it's not my original idea. I've edited it. So the NLP Communication Model is that most communication is outside of conscious awareness. And although I cover it in the book, I don't cover it in the slides that we're talking about. Most communication is outside of really conscious awareness. So if you can learn to communicate and leverage that consciousness, those things outside that conscious awareness, your chance of creating a prospect, a customer, a client is so much higher. Okay, so you'll be, this will kind of throw you away, kind of off a little bit. Communication is only 7% language. So the words you use are only 7% of that communication. And that's what we mean by it's outside of conscious awareness. Okay, physiology is 55% of communication. And you kind of can prove this by, you can look at two people across the room having a conversation. You may not be able to hear them, but you understand what's going on, their connectedness, and how they are communicating. Okay? So 7% words or language, 55% physiology, and 38% tonality. So the speed at which you speak, the tone you use, the timbre, how you use your voice, just the sound, is 38%. And that makes the entirety of the 100%. So the NLP communication model is most communication is outside conscious awareness. All right, so here we talked about it. 7% is the words we use, 38% is tone of voice, and 55% physiology. Okay, so and this is what rapport is all about. So keep that in your mind as you're trying to connect with your client, your prospect. Okay, elements of rapport. Now, the first element of rapport is how fast people move. You notice the typical kind of used car salesperson is going to be quick and speedy, but if that doesn't match with what you are doing, you're not going to connect with that guy. How you process information, whether they process it visually, in an auditory way, or kinesthetically. And a kinesthetic is feeling. So that means if you're meeting someone who's highly visual and you're not quite there, sit up, how you project makes a difference. So if they're visual, sit at the edge of your chair, breathe at the top of your lungs, and be excited. Or at least act in a way that matches what they're doing. So if you meet, on the other hand, if you meet someone who's more auditory, what they listen to is how they make decisions or how they process things. You want to slow down a bit. Moderate your voice. When we get to the closing section here in the next few weeks, when you're closing, I'm going to tell you at that time to do two things. Slow down and raise your energy level. So, and those are both communication styles that are different. So what we tend to do when we're closing is we'll speed up and we'll maybe raise the pitch of our voice, but I want you to slow down, raise your energy, what's happening internally, and moderate. And more importantly, listen. If you're meeting someone who's kinesthetic or they operate on how they feel, slow way down. And so if you're meeting a kinesthetic person, change your tone of voice so that it matches theirs. Match their tone of voice. Now, you don't have to do this ridiculously like you're mocking them, but you're matching and mirroring so they really get a sense of it. And kinesthetic is feeling, so if they have a sense of that connectedness based on your tone of voice, which is 38% of communication, you're going to connect with them because people who like each other. And if you're connected, then you're going to communicate. So, matching and mirroring. The second element of rapport is physical mirroring of an individual's physiology, copying their posture, their facial expressions, their key gestures or movement, and even their eye blinking. Now, this takes a lot of practice because you're communicating with their subconscious, your unconscious mind. Because what ultimately you want is that unconscious mind says, hey, they're just like me. And it's undeniable to the nervous system. So if a person is, let's say, using a certain hand gesture, okay, you don't have to match that like I am. I use my hands a lot, but you can be a little bit more subtle. Okay, matching is going to be if they're using their right hand, you use your right hand. If they're and mirroring is you've mirrored what they're doing. So if they're using their right hand, you can use your left hand as a mirror impression of what they do and how they operate. All right. And so what you're trying to do again is connect and communicating. Okay. So if they make certain facial expressions, if they have key gestures, the movements, what you're trying to do is connect and communicate using physiology. So matching and mirroring is important. So how they stand, how they sit. If they're up in their chair, you want to be up in your chair. With chest out, breathing at the top, sitting up straight. If they're kind of slouched, you mirror that. You match that. And doesn't necessarily, again, mean that you're mocking them, but you're matching and mirroring. Make sense? Okay, let's go into tone of voice. So the further elements to match the voice, the tempo, the quality of their voice, and the volume. All right. You can also, so if you're matching the volume, how they're speaking is what you want to match. The speed at which they operate. So how slowly or quickly that they're talking. If you want to match that and get that tone of voice, that is an element of rapport. And you want them to like you. And if they think you're like them, they will connect with you, and you're more believable, and you're more honest, and you're more sincere. So all of those things in your voice. Now look, if they're a high speaker, you don't have to raise your but raise what the timbre of your voice just a little bit to match. Okay? You can also match keywords. So if there's someone who says actually or honestly or as a matter of fact, if they use those kinds of phrases, then use those in sentences when you say it back to them. Okay, that makes sense? All right. Breathing. Fourth element is to match their breathing. You can actually pace someone's breathing by breathing at the exact same time as they do, matching how they breathe in and they breathe out. Now, these are advanced skills, okay? And you may think, oh man, I got all these things going on. I'm trying to match their blinking and their breathing and their tone of voice and how they're standing and what gestures they make and what words and phrases they make. Okay, you'll get better. But I want you to be aware of these so that it makes sense to you, okay? And then the last, fifth element is what we call chunk size. All right, now let's take a step back here. Chunking up and chunking down is an NLP concept. And chunking up is getting less specific, and chunking down is more specific. And when you talk about chunk size, it's, how to explain this? Chunk size is you want to match the sizes of the pieces of information that they use. If they go on and on about long concepts and multiple paragraphs when they're speaking, then that's something that you want to do as well. If they just use single or short clips of speech to communicate, you want to match that as well. So to be a master communicator, you want to keep in mind that people are best communicated with when you communicate with them in a way that in the same way that they process information. And remember, as you begin to use these advanced means of communication, that in another person's mind, none of their modes of operation are right or wrong. It's just how they operate. So that being said, again, how big or small those pieces of information that they are communicating, whether short little spurts of a few words or small sentences or long paragraphs, those are things that you want to match and mirror also. Okay. In addition, you can match the person's predicates or phrases and look at how look at those, notice the words and phrases that they use in each system. So if they may, okay, this is getting a little deeper in the weeds, but we got it just a minute, all right, and I'll cover this. So if someone is a visual person, they're going to say, this is what I'm looking at. This is what I see. This is how I view it. They're going to use words that are are visual. Okay, if they are an auditory person, hey Fraser, appreciate you coming on. If they're an auditory person, Fraser, missed some of I've got this on Zoom going on another thing, so you can watch the recording and catch all of it. But if they're an auditory person, they're going to use words like, "This is what I hear. This sounds like this idea." So they're going to use listening words. So when I'm listening to you, what I'm hearing you say is ... So if you use those type of words and giving it back to them in that modality, they're going to connect with you. All right. Same thing with feelings. Okay. If they're a kinesthetic person, they are going to look at how things feel. Here's what I feel like you're saying. Here's what I'm thinking. So what's going on in their head? So if you've got an auditory person and they're using, or a visual person and they're using words like, "This is what I'm seeing, this is what it looks like," use those words back to them. If they're auditory, "This is what I'm hearing, this is what this sounds like." If they're a kinesthetic or feeling person, "This is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling." So when you're using sales, being able to connect with a person is a lot of those. And those kinds of words actually reveal what's going on in their head. So as you begin to notice and use all that, you can ask questions. Okay? And you can phrase those questions in those modalities, in visual, audio, and so on. Okay? Appreciate you being on today. This will be live in the group, so enjoy that. The next thing we're going to talk about in our sales process is how to ask questions. Okay? Fraser, anything that you want me to cover while you're on? Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to do these. I'm in quarantine. You're probably in quarantine, so I may go through this entire ebook and that I've written, the NLP 5-step selling process. So I'll go through a lot of them. Appreciate it. So I'll post this in the group. It should show up here in just a minute. And if you have any questions in the meantime, ask them in the group. So if you have any questions about what went on the video, ask them in the group, and so that everybody can benefit. All right? Okay, guys. We'll talk to you soon.